It was a stormy night in June when the skeleton knocked on my door for the third time this week. The first time the creature appeared, I was scared out of my mind, but it was the familiar kind of scare. The kind from a bad high, and so I passed it off as a hallucination. The second time was just 2 nights ago. I was oddly calm and just waited the night out for the shady beast to up and leave by sunrise. But now, I was annoyed. Why did I have to show up now, and why before me? I was already cranky and buzzed from a hard day's work of scamming, dealing, and raking in poker money at the local bar. I didn't need some ghost monster to make my night agony. I shifted my focus to the deck of cards I was idly shuffling, and decided to just wait the night out again. The clock on the wall droned on. Tick, tick, tick. My thumb glided through the cards. 6 of diamonds, tick. 5 of hearts, tick. 4 of spades, tick. Impatience seeped in. I set down the deck, silenced the laughing chatter of the television, and stood. With drunken eagerness propelling me forward, and my rationality left behind at the couch, I opened the door just a crack to shoo the creature off, and was able to get a full glimpse of the monster that's been haunting me. The skeletal man before me donned a trench coat and a trilby hat, all drenched in rain. Without any facial features, he was expressionless, and yet his fleshless eye sockets seemed to peer into my very soul, like little voids. Peeking from the sleeves of his drenched coat were bone hands that clutched a daunting scythe, half my size. The weapon had a sleek and shiny crescent blade that looked like it had a thirst to drink blood. Likely mine. And yet my drunken self never felt any fear, only hubris. I snapped at the stranger. Listen, I don't want to buy any Girl Scout cookies, peddler. Bug off! The skeleton's jaw creaked open as a voice boomed imposingly. I am death. And your time is up, swindler. You have shunned me for the last time. Let me in. Yeah, as if I'm just gonna welcome in a creepy Halloween decoration, I slurred back. The skeleton continued. You have avoided your fate for too long, swindler. Your life has been wasted away in debauchery. You have harmed countless others with your greed and gluttony. Such sinful behavior warrants the death sentence. Let me in, and let your life be whisked away. I scoffed. Yeah, okay, very poetic, Edgar Allan Poe. Maybe I am a filthy sinner, but at least I'm raking in the dough with every sucker I cheat, every game I play, and every card I deal. I got a good life, and I'm not going anywhere. So go find someone else's soul to reap, numbskull. I reared my arm to slam the door, when a familiar sight caught my eye. Looking back, I found between the skeleton's phalanges a playing card. A 4 of spades. Very well, then. If games are the only language you understand, swindler. The skeleton seemed to smirk behind its gritted teeth. Then let us play. Enticed, I slowly opened the door a little more. "What are we playing for?" I asked. The skeleton raised his chin with the confidence of a man who knows he's about to win. He gestured to his weapon. "If you are victorious, I shall bestow upon you my scythe. With it, you will be able to kill anyone you desire with one fell swoop. Or just sell it, as you likely will." His grip on the handle tightened. "But if I win, I take your life. Do we have a fair deal?" I swung the door open, letting the rain creep onto my floor, and beamed foolishly. "You're on," I laughed. The skeleton insisted that we use his set of cards. Something about never trusting a swindler's loaded deck. He made a thorough effort to ensure that I wasn't hiding anything up my sleeves and forced me to wear a t-shirt. I didn't argue, for I lacked the sober effort to defy death itself. We were half an hour and several drinks. As to how he was able to down a round of booze with no stomach was beyond me, into our friendly game of life and death, when the air began to tense up. The skeleton kept his void-like eyes fixated on me, not even seeming once to look down at the cards in his hands. He spoke casually. "Why did you begin this life of crime, swindler?" "Easiest way to make money," I smirked. "Ain't my fault folks these days are too dull and easy to make a quick buck off of. I'm just acting smart in a fool's world, and I don't care how much that rattles your bones." "Have you not once stopped to consider the lives you've poisoned?" The skeleton raised his voice sternly. "Why don't I show you?" He gestured for me to look back at my hand. I should have been surprised to see that my cards have all been replaced with 3 photographs, all of people I didn't recognize. One of an enraged man with a bleeding nose, one of a disheveled, weeping old woman, another of a horrified child, bound in rope, who appeared to scream. My drunken smirk faded, and my sobered stomach lurched. "See their faces now, sinner. That's the man whose nose you broke in a bar fight after you cheated for money for the first time. And that's the mother who was cast into the streets after you extorted her of her life savings. And that's the child who was kidnapped as punishment for his father who couldn't repay his debt to you." The skeleton laid his cards down and stood up to tower over me, as if he were interrogating me. The contorted faces in the photographs sent icicles down my back. "Do you know what they all have in common, swindler?" The skeleton boomed as he struck the table in frustration. "I had to guide each of their poor souls to the afterlife too soon." There was a moment of silence between us, as the skeleton sunk back into his seat. "And that is just 3 people. Imagine the countless others who have suffered, all because you think that their innocent lives are your personal bank. Imagine. Imagine." I stared at him in stunned, uncomfortable silence for a moment, with echoes of my past decisions whizzing around my head like mosquitoes. Glancing back to my hand, I found that the phantom photographs were gone, and my playing cards had returned to normal. Eventually, I found the resolve to speak. Looks like it's time for the final hand. Ready?
Good. Now this debacle can come to an end. Reveal your cards,
The skeleton demanded. I obeyed and exposed my vulnerable hand. I swallowed hard. 3 of a kind. I sighed.
A worthy attempt, swindler. But it wasn't enough.
The skeleton tossed his cards to me and reached for his scythe.
Royal flush.
At that moment, I would have cried. I would have keeled over and begged for another chance. I would have laughed out loud at the sheer fact that I had lost the one fair game I had ever played, or vomited from the overwhelming anticipation of the skeleton's scythe, ripping all of my money, my cards, my whole world from my grasp. But I didn't. Instead, I closed my eyes and imagined myself as one of those ruined people in the photographs. There was no fighting it. The skeleton had won fairly, and I couldn't cheat my way out this time. I waited for the coldness of mortality to seep in. Tick, tick. Any moment now. Tick, tick, tick. Creak, creak. Instead of feeling the blade being raised up against me, I heard the skeleton's footsteps creep towards the door. His voice boomed one last time with decisive resolve.
Did you expect me to take your life tonight, swindler? No. I realize now that a quick death is too good for you. Instead, I shall leave you with this.
He aimed a piercing finger towards my heart.
A punishment worse than death is a life of suffering, much like the lives of the people whom you have exploited. And thus I curse you, swindler, to live a long, long life of endless poverty. Only when you have been beaten into a state of repentance and insanity shall I grant the mercy to end your misery with death.
He then opened the door, letting rain stain the floor and claps of thunder filled the room. And with that, the skeleton that haunted me was gone, but not before one last taunt. Before he slammed the door behind him, he made sure that I got a clear glimpse of his coat sleeve. Or rather, what fluttered out from it. A 4 of spades. The bastard's been keeping cards up his sleeve the whole time. I've just let myself be cheated by death, and I will regret it for the rest of my long, long life.